Okay, can you guys hear me now? Let me know on the stream if you guys are able to hear me. Let me see. Test, test, test. Hello, hello. Okay, can you guys hear? Yo, I'm so sorry about that, guys. To Hingle McGringle, thank you so much for letting me know about the audio. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Like I said, I just switched my broadcasting software over. So this is my first stream actually using OBS. So that's my bad. I did not add my audio on there. Thank you so much. I seriously appreciate that. So I guess go back a little bit, guys. I'm really glad y'all are joining tonight. I just wanted to hop on for a little bit to answer any questions that you guys might have regarding like my job, the tech career in general, coding bootcamp, whatever you guys want. It's like I said yesterday. You guys didn't hear me. Yesterday was my first year at my second software engineering job. So I just celebrated like my first 1 year or whatever, and I just wanted to have a chance to come kind of just talk and share with you guys a little bit. Just, what some of the things I've learned over this 1 year and kind of where I see the job market going and changing. Because I think it's changing a lot, like really fast, especially with COVID now and everything. So if you're in a coding boot camp or if you're looking to transition from one career into like an entry level IT career, not even necessarily a software developer, I just want to start kind of talking about my perspective on that a little bit more with some of the videos that I'm dropping. Because I think it'll be useful for people to kind of get ahead and stay ahead when it comes to like getting a job and getting hired um, in this climate right now. Because it's really tough, guys. So if you're like a coding bootcamp student right now and you're gonna be looking to get your very first job, I think it's gonna be tough, or it's getting tougher to get that entry level software development job. And so, but that doesn't mean that getting into IT is going to be tough, right? There's a lot of different jobs that need to be filled, a lot of different roles that are going to be created like through the pandemic as well too. There's going to be a new type of worker is required to fill those roles, guys. So I think upskilling, retraining, retooling, like those types of programs and things like that. Not necessarily a boot camp in itself, but people being familiar with like no code platforms and just knowing how to learn new softwares really quickly. And then also just being savvy with how to learn or find new tools that people don't necessarily know about or even teach you. It's pretty much to accomplish a job. So like product owners, product managers, um, or pretty much just anybody involved with a product in any sort of way. There's so many different tools out there that help people do their job efficiently. Um, and those tools might be brand new and people don't necessarily hear about them a lot or learn about them a lot. So, the more savvy you can be with learning how to just be efficient, in tech, how to get things done, how to use automation, how to use, different tools that simplify workflows or that can take a complicated process or complex process and simplify it. Like simplify uh, a number of steps for teams in developing a product, whatever it is. There's just so many different ways that I think new workers are going to be required to be efficient. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a developer per se, but yeah. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Let's see how many people we have here. How to get into coding. All right. So first question we have comes from Ice. All right. I'm not gonna. All right. I get it. Funny name. I'm not gonna say it, but I get it though. He says, "Hey man, my question: how to get into coding?" So this is a good one. I think it just depends on what you want to do. So for example, like if you want to build web apps, I would just jump in and pick a language and start watching some tutorials and download a text editor or IDE or even go to one like in the browser. Like here, I can actually share my screen really quickly. let me do that. So on CodePen, you can pretty much come in here and add like HTML. You can add CSS, and you can see it kind of live come out right here. Exactly what you're doing. There's no JavaScript on this one, but you could easily just come on the CodePen, make an account, and just start messing around with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is before you even have to necessarily build like an actual web page, or I'm sorry, build an actual application. You can come in here and just learn the basics with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can make like a single page app, or practice some simple JavaScript stuff in your website. And then when you're ready to move up from here, you can go to something like Replit, which allows you to also make do I have anything inside this one? I'm not even sure what this is. Okay, yeah, this is something I made a while ago, but yeah, essentially you can come into something like this, Replit, and this is similar to CodePen, but just more powerful. So you can see like over here in CodePen, we can only do HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But with Replit, we can pick a lot more languages. If you go to a new REPL, you can see that there's a lot more languages and stuff you can pick from. And this is convenient because it's a lot quicker to get started. So you can actually start playing around with different languages without having to download all the necessary like environment stuff and like installing a lot of different files, which you will have to do eventually when you're ready to start building those apps and everything on your local machine. But if you're really just trying to, like you said, just get into coding and just get started somewhere, then these are pretty much the two kind of like browser IDEs I'd recommend. Depending on if you're doing front end, you can go with CodePen because it's just really quick and in the browser to set up. You don't have to do anything to really get started. And if you're trying to build applications, I'd probably recommend Replit because you can test everything right inside the browser without downloading a bunch of extra stuff onto your machine. So those would be like my two recommendations. And then just YouTube, like go watch some YouTube videos. Like I said, this is after you pick a language and decide something that you kind of want to work on, something that you want to do. Yeah, I would just hop on YouTube and just find something that interests you and just try to build it. Start very small, something really small. Like I said, this is just a little simple single page app that I made like 4 years ago or something. I'm sorry, not single page app, but a single page website that I made like 4 years ago. So this is mad simple, but anything to pretty much just get you started and get you excited about building stuff and kind of seeing the results come to life. So those would probably be like my biggest tips on like where I would start right now in 2021. You don't have to spend a ton of money to get started. You don't have to buy a bunch of tools or courses or anything. There's a lot of free resources where you can get started right now, and it won't even cost you anything. So appreciate the question. Yeah, thank you, man. I'm glad it was helpful. Next question is, if I graduate from a boot camp, let's say App Academy, for example, what's the average salary paying job just for having a boot camp with no CS degree? If I get offered a $60K a year job, should I keep searching for a higher paying software engineering starting job? That's a really good question from Wake Up. So I appreciate that question. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So if I graduate from a coding bootcamp, let's say App Academy, for example, what is the average salary paying job just for having a bootcamp with no CS degree? So that's a great question. So it's going to range, right? So I don't know where you are, Wake Up. I don't know if you feel comfortable dropping in the chat like what city or state you're in. But it's going to be based on where you are, where you live, the averages. So my coding, I'm in Detroit. So where I'm at, my coding bootcamp, this was 2 years ago, 2018. So going on 3 years ago. The graduating average salary was $52,000. Now, again, that is average graduate salary, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody made that, because not everybody becomes a software developer. And then like what you're saying too, everybody has like different experience when they come into boot camp. So some people already had like degrees and then work experience in some other field. So I had people in my class, for example, they might have had like 10 years of HR experience. So that doesn't mean that they got lowballed for their first job offer or anything like that, but they might have gotten paid more accordingly to like their previous experience, if that makes sense. So like, just because they went through a coding boot camp, and some people might have made like way more than that 50,000 here. Some of that was because they had degrees and then like many years of work experience before also going to coding boot camp and then adding that to their resume. I will say for myself that my first job after coding boot camp was $55,000 salary, and it was a junior developer job. And again, like I said, I'm in Michigan, so that is very specific to like the market up here. I know other people who made more than that at their first job, and I know people, of course, that made less than that at their first job. So I heard they pay higher interest in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure. So he says, I heard they pay higher interest in Silicon Valley. That's a good one. I would look it up. I'm not 100% sure. What I would say is that the engineers in Silicon Valley are going to be very, very experienced. And all right, so let's take a step back. So when you're asking what's the average salary, it's going to depend on your job market. So based on whatever city you're in, I would look up what the average junior developer salary is in your city first. So I would look at that first, because that, I think, is a better telling sign than necessarily what the average of your coding bootcamp is. Because the coding bootcamp is going to want to promote numbers to make them look good and everything too. So I would definitely just do your own research on your market about what they're paying junior level developers. Like, look at the averages in your area. Now, when you say, if I get offered a $60K a year job, should I keep searching for a higher paying software engineering job starting out? That depends on you. I would personally probably say no, just because, like I said, here in Michigan, a $60,000 or $55,000 like entry level software engineering job is pretty on par. It's like pretty standard. So no, I wouldn't say look for, this is me in my experience, I would say no, because you need to get the experience first. And when you first graduate a coding bootcamp, you're not really ready for a high paying software engineering job. Like, I just don't think most people are. There's no way you learn enough. And take that with a grain of salt, because I know there are people that have done it. Like, there's a guy named Clement, I forgot his last name, but he's a YouTuber. And he had an engineering degree, I think, before he went to coding bootcamp. And then his first job after coding bootcamp was at Google. But I think that's super rare, and it's super rare. So I'm sure he got way more than 60 at his first job and everything. But I would say the average person coming out of coding bootcamp is not going to be ready to get a job like that. So it depends on you. Don't let me stop you. I would just say that 60 grand for your first software engineering job, I think, is very fair, and it's a very good rate to start your career off at. So it's up to you. It depends on your lifestyle, what your expenses are, like what you're looking to, do and accomplish. So check that out yourself and make that decision. But that's what I would say on those two. So thank you. Let me know if that answers your question, Wake Up. So it says Florida. Okay, so you're in Florida, but willing to move to San Diego for the highest offer. Okay, so yeah. If you're willing to relocate, the good thing right now is that a lot of jobs aren't expecting you to relocate. A lot of jobs are usually cool with you being remote right now. So even if you live in San Diego, you might be able to work for a company in Silicon Valley if you get hired out there without moving remotely. I actually know someone right now that works as a data scientist in Silicon Valley but lives here in Michigan and gets paid San Fran money. So that's possible with Coronas, which is great. Yeah, no problem, man. No problem at all. Okay, so Hingle McGringle, back up. So they say, so I'm interested in Python for cybersecurity and mobile development with Kotlin. I'm going to start 100 days of code challenge soon. Between Python or Kotlin, which would you recommend first to learn? Okay, so that's a good question. I actually don't know Python or Kotlin, but my first boot camp that I learned how to code was in Java. So Java, from what I understand, Kotlin is very similar to Java. It's just for I believe mobile. So to be honest, if you're going into cybersecurity, cybersecurity and mobile development. So okay, that's a big chunk to bite off right there. Okay, so what I'll say is that those are two completely different fields, right? Like cybersecurity and mobile development. Now, and I'm not saying that to like discourage you anywhere. Let's just break it down, right? So cybersecurity is a huge world, like a huge world. That area is growing so fast. Those people are getting paid so much money. Talk about like even within the developer and like tech world, like the cybersecurity world, that is growing like crazy. So I can totally understand why you say cybersecurity, but at the same time, like being a cybersecurity person, like whether it's a cybersecurity analyst or administrator, whatever the role is, that is much different of a role than per se like a software engineer. And I would say even that is different specifically from a mobile developer because the same things might apply, but the specialties that these people have are so much different, right? So for mobile development, I think Kotlin is great because you're picking a language that's specific to mobile. I believe Kotlin only allows you to develop for Android, so don't quote me on that. But if you are looking to develop for Android, then Kotlin might make sense. If you're ever looking to get into like cross compatibility with iPhone and Android, you might want to look into like React Native or Xamarin or any other language that allows you to kind of write once but run twice on the iPhone and on Android. So that way you kind of get the biggest bang for your buck when learning mobile development. You're not just getting stuck into learning Kotlin, which limits you to Android platform only. So that's one suggestion on that. But again, I'm not a mobile developer. That's just, kind of my 2 cents. But like I said, so if you're going to do the Kotlin and mobile route, that's one world and that's one thing and that's one set of tools. Cybersecurity is totally different. Like cybersecurity involves a lot of fundamental knowledge about networking. So if you're not already really, really strong in networking, or if you don't have a passion for networking, then I would say probably do more research on cybersecurity before making that decision. Python's a good language to learn regardless because it's just a very readable language, especially for like, it's like Ruby in a sense. Like for anyone who's never coded before, it's easy to kind of like actually read and kind of wrap your head around. It's very simple to write, like in terms of like doing basic things, writing the files, opening the file, like everything is just very straightforward in Python. There's a lot of documentation out there, so it should be easy to figure out whatever you don't know. And it's growing, right? Like it's used for data analysis and data modeling and all types of stuff. Like my data science friends use a lot of Python and R and stuff like that when they're doing like their machine learning models and all that stuff. So there's a million things you can do with Python. So I think that is a great language to learn if you're trying to get into coding or whatever. But at the same time, cybersecurity is just such a big field that I would say if you don't have like a burning passion to go learn a lot about networking, or if you don't already have a background in like serious networking stuff, then I would probably hold off on cybersecurity just because there's just so much prerequisite knowledge that one needs before going down the cybersecurity like route. So I would say, go ahead and do your coding thing, like learn Python, build apps with it, or build your mobile apps with Kotlin if you want to get started with that. But just from a building apps perspective, I would get familiar with that first, and then try to understand where your apps are vulnerable, like what mistakes you make when you're building your apps that make your apps vulnerable to attacks and things like that. Because there's just so much stuff, man. Without going into like a super rant with cybersecurity, there's just so much. That you have to know, right? So if that's what you want to dedicate your time to, I would say great. Like do that. Learn about networkings and packets and MAC addresses and learn about attacks and different vulnerabilities and how to break into a network. Like I would do all those things and just spend all your time doing that. And then I would put the Python and Kotlin on the side if you want to get into that more than you want to get into coding specifically. But you're going to come back around full circle and meet in the middle. So it's up to you. But that's just my 2 cents. I think those are completely different worlds. So I'd be careful about which one you kind of dive into the most, because they're both going to take a lot of time to really get good at. So Hope that answers that. Okay, so the next question is, what's more important, making sure I'm solid with the fundamentals? It says, what's more important for me what's more important for me isn't looking for a job right away, but making sure I'm solid with the fundamentals of programming first. Okay, so yeah, with that, then for sure, you have time. Then, if you're not concerned with necessarily getting a job right now, and you're worried about the fundamentals, then for sure, go work on some projects. Like, go build some stuff in Python, build some stuff in Kotlin if you want, or like kind of work on a little bit of each. Like, build a web app in Python and Django, or if you're not into web apps, if you're trying to get into like data science, something like that, you can do some web scraping or do some like data analysis with Python. So when I say that, I mean like a project, like a data analysis project or some sort of web scraping project, whatever you want with Python, right? Just to get the syntax down, the libraries, learn the basic whatever it is. And then with Kotlin, you can build a simple app, right? Like take a course, build a simple like mobile app, and that way you've got two projects kind of in flight with coding, and then you can kind of just work on those, like adding things to those projects. You can push those projects up to GitHub, and then you can add features to them, and basically take your time, like you're saying, and just learn the fundamentals if you want to, because the cybersecurity stuff is gonna come as you're building more. Like, you'll understand more about vulnerabilities and stuff. It might take a while, but I just really think that if you want to get into cybersecurity, definitely go the coding route first, because there's so much with cybersecurity, and usually those people are already really good developers who will go into cybersecurity. Okay, so wake up. We're back with another question. It says, how long did it really take you to get good at coding? I know that we aren't ready once we get out of coding bootcamp, but after that. That's a really good question. So to be honest, you won't feel ready when you finish bootcamp. That's for sure. And you definitely won't be good at coding when you finish bootcamp. That's for sure. But what I'll say is, you also won't. There is no set period of time like after bootcamp where like all of a sudden everything would just make sense. I say that because a lot of people, once they finish coding bootcamp, they go on the job search and they stop coding. That's just it. They update their resume, and they go start filling out a bunch of applications, and they say, hey, I went through this bootcamp. This is what I know. I know SQL. I know Node.js. I'm a full stack developer. I've used AWS and Elastic Beanstalk, and I know CSS. I know all these libraries and blah, blah, blah. And they pretty much just go, I'm not going to say they lie, but they definitely inflate their accomplishments on their resume to get that first job, which is understandable, right? You spend like all that time in a boot camp, and it's all to get a better paying job and things like that. But what I'll say is that none of this stuff is going to click or become easier unless you are consistently coding, and that's the one thing I'll say. So to answer your question, I would say maybe a year. To be honest, like a year after coding bootcamp and having a job for a year and working with other developers and a mentor, and then also just working on projects that whole year. And when I say working on projects, I mean like really trying my hand at pretty much a lot of different things, right? So I bought Udemy courses in like everything, like every single if it wasn't a shame, I would honestly show you guys right now, but I figured that might be for another time. But I have a bunch of Udemy courses on stuff that like I never completed the course, but I just wanted to keep coding, and kind of like how I was just telling McGringle, it like there's so much out there. So even in the Python Kotlin world, like I understand that I've never used those two languages. Like I've used a little bit of Python, but I don't write it a lot. But I understand that dilemma of like, there's so much out there, there's so many tools out there, and there's so much to get familiar with and exposed to, that it's gonna take a while to really feel comfortable about all of it. Because for me, I had to go see all the differences, but then the similarities between all the technologies, right? So I build something in Node. I did like a Colt Steel course on like Node.js and building the Yelp camp thing and whatever. So like building a full stack app in Node, then building a full stack app in Ruby, building a full stack app in Java, build a full stack app in C#, and like eventually you start to notice that things are the same. They're just different. Like, I know that sounds really dumb, but you're doing the same things in all these languages, but they all have a different process, a different syntax for how you do it, or a different maybe library that you use to do certain things and accomplish it. So it's not gonna be easy. It's not like 2 months after boot camp everything clicks and then you're good. It's a lot of comparing different things. At least this is all my experience, right? Like if you have a background in computer science or if you're familiar with this stuff already, maybe it'll click faster for someone like that. Like I said, the guy that had an engineering degree before he went to coding boot camp. Of course, like he was able to kind of sort the information out in his mind, like better than the average coding bootcamp grad in a way, because he was already familiar with computational thinking and how the engineering background and stuff like that. But for me, it took like playing with different. I even built TypeScript apps and like different ORMs, object relational mappers, that allow you to like save things to databases, but they're different, but they're all the same. You know what I mean? So I had to play around with all that stuff first and then start to be like, okay, this reminds me of that. This is very similar to this. And okay, this is all accomplishing pretty much the same thing. And then you kind of pick what you like, or you pick what fits best for certain scenarios, and you start to just feel more confident. So for me, that process took about a year. It doesn't have to take that long for you or anybody else. It just depends on how much time you spend coding outside of coding bootcamp. So my biggest tip is that when you guys finish coding bootcamp, that you just literally code as much as possible without burning yourself out. Another thing too is like the DevOps side. It took a while to learn. So even with coding bootcamp, right? Like you get familiar with coding, and like once you can feel confident building like a basic CRUD app or something like that, there's still you have to get the app off of your computer and onto a web server somewhere that the rest of the world can go to a URL and they can use your app, see your work, whether that's employers, your friends, your family, right? And that's an entirely different process that maybe your bootcamp will teach you. My bootcamp didn't really teach us that. We used Elastic Beanstalk on AWS, but we didn't really learn what that process was doing, and we didn't really learn how to do it on our own, to be honest. Like the first time I had to deploy an app on my own, it took a while because it wasn't something that you spend a lot of time on in coding bootcamp. So all in all, before you get comfortable with all these things, right? Like building an app, a CRUD app, and then being able to deploy it to, the web where other people can use it. For me, that process took about a year before I really felt like, I can go charge a client and not really feel like in my head about imposter syndrome or whatever, because pretty much the gist of what you need to do. It doesn't mean you have all the answers to everything, right? Because I don't think anybody will ever have all the answers to everything in tech. But just feeling confident that you can go build. You know what your range is. Like what you can build, how long it'll take you versus something else you haven't done before. So about a year of consistent coding after coding bootcamp and working my job too, and seeing a lot of legacy code is when I started to feel really confident. Okay, so next question. How long did it take you to feel that click, to feel like 100% software developer? Yeah, okay. So now that you are in the industry and that you have become a software developer, what would be your next goal? Are you going to stick to software development and go from junior to senior and higher? That's a great question, Wake Up. Thank you so much for asking that question. No, actually, I don't think so. I do enjoy software engineering and everything, and my next goal right now is to become a mid-level. So at my current job, like I said at the beginning of the stream, I don't know if my audio was working at that time, but yesterday was my 1 year job anniversary. So it was my first year at this job as a software developer, my second year in the market as a professional software developer. And my goal this year at the company is to get promoted to mid-level developer. So that is my next goal for sure. But after that, no, my goal is not to become a senior software engineer, which I'm going to make a video about that at some time. But, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with a senior role. And it's at that point, you're not just a senior. A lot of people don't understand that, like, senior developers are much more than just really good developers. They're mentors, they're team leads, they're scrum masters in some cases, they're project managers in some cases. They're on call like a doctor, kind of like almost at any time if anything blows up. It's very difficult for them to take a vacation, so they might make $120,000, $150,000, depending on where they work, right? But your ability to enjoy that money and that time is very, very different when you're a senior developer, because just the level of importance that you have to the team, the product, and the company is so much different. And I don't know that I enjoy coding to that extent of a senior developer that I would want to be that person that, you know, at 3 a.m. or whatever, you know, it could be my phone going off that I have to, you know, get up and want to jump into a problem and fix something and deploy some things and work on it. You know, I don't know. It's so far, I think I have a lot of soft skills that I'm good at, like dealing with clients and product teams and things like that. And I think having the software engineering experience really opens you up to so many different roles. So for me personally, like I said, I want to get the mid-level promotion, because that's just like a personal goal of mine that I just want to kind of get that professional check mark and just know that I kind of like reached that point. Because right now my job title is just full stack developer. So like I said, the next step is to become like mid-level full stack developer at my job, which that title changes too. So even if I get promoted to mid-level developer at my current job, doesn't mean that the next job that hires me, I would be a mid-level at that job. That'd be the goal. The goal would be to get mid-level at one job, so that if you go work as a developer at another job, you can get hired as a mid as well too, which of course like pays you better. But I'm still exploring right now what I think the next move, like role wise, would be best for me. So is it Scrum Master? Is it project manager? Is it product owner? So is it business analyst? And I'm looking at one of those kind of like 4 roles that I think will be better for me in the long run, right? Like in terms of my personal strengths and other things that I enjoy doing besides just coding. I think coding is a really great skill to have, because it makes you more well-rounded. It makes you more versatile for like other roles and positions and things like that, because most people only have like a certain level of technical knowledge or experience. But then when you have that coding experience, it kind of opens up way more doors for you professionally. So yeah, I think that's going to be more of my route. I think I'm going to get more into like I hate the term management, because I'm not that kind of person. I'm not looking to like micromanage or manage people necessarily, but I just think those roles on the product teams and being a part of the product and like technical process, but just more on the business side, I think is where I'm gonna be in the next like year or two. But as of right now, for the rest of 2021, my goal is to get the mid-level title. So that's a really great question. I appreciate you asking that one, because I'm gonna make a video on that too. So thank you for that. Okay, so Hingle McGringle, follow-up question. What are your thoughts on quality assurance as a career path as well, and what are good resources to learn more? I tried looking for Udemy courses, but the quality is lacking. So that's a really great question. A lot of people from my bootcamp that didn't get hired as software developers, like right out the door, did get hired as other things like business analysts or QAs. So to answer your question, I don't look down on anybody whose first role in tech is a quality analyst, a QA, at all, because those are great ways to get your foot in the door, especially if coding, like coming out of bootcamp, like Wake Up was saying, if you come out of coding bootcamp and like maybe at that time you're not 100% confident in your coding ability, but that does not mean that any way that you're not ready to get your first job in tech, which is like the crazy part, right? Like that's the crazy thing about tech, is like you can feel imposter syndrome and feel like you don't know anything, and as a matter of fact, you might not know anything, but you know more than the average like pool of applicants out there, and it's enough to actually get you in the door where you can then begin learning the real skills and things that the job needs you to know, that you can really be effective. So it's crazy that you can not know so much in tech but still, you know, be ready for an entry level role. And like those QA roles I think are great for people who either are having a tough time in the job market, because like I said, getting an entry level software engineering job or junior developer job is going to be very, very tough, because the boot camps popping up right now are pumping out so many more applicants that it's making it tougher on the entry level developers with no experience at all, because they're just seeing so many applicants from so many boot camps that are not good. Like, I'm sorry, that's just what it is. It's not us, it's not the whatever. It's just these boot camps are making money, right? So there's so many people who they're trying to just retool, retrain, and pump them out into the job market. So these jobs are getting used to seeing really bad resumes and really bad code and really bad, graduates of these coding boot camps, which is making their requirements for entry level developers much, much, much tougher. Year after year, it's getting tougher. So a QA role is a great way to, if that isn't something you thrive at right after boot camp, like doing algorithms, technical interviews, and whatever. But if you have a good foundation of what you learned and about just languages in general. So let's say you learn Node or something, right? So if you learn Node, you have a good understanding of like NPM, package managers, IDEs, and JSON, XML. Like you know the basics of just how the web works, how apps work, things like that. You could be a less desirable candidate for a junior developer role, but a very high demand candidate for a QA role because there's just less technical skills needed of a QA, but they still need to be technical. So QAs are a great way to like get your foot in the door, and because then you'll be working directly with developers, right? If you get hired as a QA, you're actually writing tests, or it depends on the job. So right, it depends on what type of QA there are at that particular job. QAs are different everywhere. But for the most part, you'll be working directly with developers or a team of developers. You're going to see their entire workflow. You're going to be in their Scrum meetings, in their project planning, sprint planning meetings. You're going to see, how they think, how they problem solve. You're going to find out, about the code base like that they're working in. You're going to watch them deal with the business. So you're going to get all of the same experiences of what a developer would be expected to have. And you'll be working very closely with developers who you can learn from. You'll be testing a lot of things. So whenever bugs and errors come up, depending on how good of a QA you are, your job won't just be to test the code and pretty much tell somebody when it broke, but your job might also be to test the code and find out why it broke and where it broke and kind of come up with approaches to solutions and things like that. So then when you're actually going through a suite of tests and something broke, you can get good enough at, searching the database or debugging the code that you can go to the developers and say, hey guys, we got this bug over here in this file, but this thing is null, and I think that's happening because I looked at this place in the database and the values aren't there like we thought, and blah blah. So at least that way you get familiar with like how tech teams communicate, how developers communicate, and you're getting, like I said, all that same agile experience, all that important stuff. You're still getting that as a QA. So I think a QA role is great when you first start out, because you need to just get into tech, you need to get your first job, and you need to get around that environment so you can learn and you can transfer that into a developer role or into another job, whenever the time is right. You have that experience and you've been around it now, so that you're not just, your only experience isn't just in boot camp. So yeah, I think QA roles are great. They might not get paid as much as a developer depending on what type of QA role it is, and you might not get to be as involved with code, but at the same time, that's up to you and how good of a QA you want to be, because I know some QAs that don't code at all. I know some QAs that write automation suites. It just depends on which one you want to be and how good you want to be at QA, Okay, so, okay, sorry. And you said, what are some resources? So some resources for QA. Yeah, I'm not a QA, so I'm not 100% sure, but I know if you go online, I know you said you looked at Udemy and the quality is lacking. So maybe it isn't necessarily a Udemy course, but I can tell you tools that you can maybe go learn that will help you. So like JMeter, I know is a great tool for here. Let's just do this, right? All right, so JMeter. Yeah, so JMeter is a tool that QAs use to run scripts and things like that. So you could definitely look up a course on how to use Apache JMeter for testing. But again, this is only just one. Like there's also BlazeMeter. So you can definitely go get familiar with one of these two. You can go look at even if it's not a Udemy course, right? I don't know what other maybe learning platforms you use, Coursera or whatever, but whatever e-learning platform you use, including YouTube, right? Just find someone or a resource that is going to teach you QA testing tools. So maybe not so much how to be a QA, but just the testing tools in general. Because then that way you'll get a more realistic idea of like what they're doing every day. Also, you'll want to download Postman as well. So I have Postman on my machine, but just to show you like what they're using. So you'll definitely want to go, I think you'll want to use Postman regardless. So definitely go download Postman if you haven't already, because you'll need this for sure. And then just go learn one of these tools, JMeter or Apache JMeter. Or maybe there's other ones too. Like these are the ones that I know. But basically like just find like automated, testing suites or whatever people are using, whatever tools they're like in your job market. Look up QA roles and see what tools they're learning or asking people to know. And just get familiar with those tools. Because when you start learning these tools, you'll learn about JSON, API calls, endpoints, HTTP status codes. You'll learn all that stuff from using these tools, from using Postman with these other tools. So between that, man, you should be good to go. Because I know the QAs at my job, they use like CSV files to create test scripts that they run through one of these, I think JMeter. So just maybe not a QA course per se, but a course on these tools will definitely help you in. Sorry guys, wrong screen. Hopefully that helps right there. All right, so back to wake up. I heard that having experience in coding opens the doors for you to many kinds of tech careers: cyber, product management, SAP, functional analyst, data science. The sky is the limit. That's why I ask. If I were looking for the highest paying job in the tech industry, the starting point for me is coding. But after that, which job should I go for? Which job have you heard that pays the most? Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree completely with everything you just said. Coding definitely opens the doors a lot. And after this, I have one more question from Romello Gilbert. So I'm gonna answer that question after this one, wake up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and shut down the stream. But I'm gonna start doing this like every week, hopefully. Maybe it won't be a Q&A, but I'll be doing a live stream every week. So we'll get back to that, and I'll make sure that I have this kind of like more often. I enjoy this, like this feedback with you guys, hearing what you guys want to learn about. I really appreciate this. All right, so cool. So if you were looking to get the highest paying job in the tech industry, the starting point is coding. But after that, what job should I go for? That's a really good one. To be completely honest with you, right? That depends on the company. Because companies value different roles differently. So like at my job right now, I can't say for certain, but I know for a fact that senior engineers are not the highest paid jobs at my job right now. So for example, like a senior product owner would make a lot more money than a senior developer or a developer at my job for sure. Now the reason for that, if you think about it, right, developers in a lot of way are your new factory worker. There, I said it. I hate to say it like that. I really do. But at the end of the day, guys, coding is just a manual, like, glorified data entry role, being a developer. So it's not something that people really hold up on a pedestal like, oh, we love developers so much. Guys, developers are there to get the job done because you enjoy doing something that no one else enjoys or knows how to do. But that gets taken advantage of a lot, and you're not always appreciated in that way. So, you're responsible for building all the products that makes the company money, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to value you in salary that same way. So if you have heard the stories about like game developers that work at these like gaming companies, like Rockstar Games and these other big name like title developers, those developers don't make much money in relation to what they do for those, like, and how much time they spend building those games, and then they don't get usually credit, like artistic credit, in the game development process. So same thing at Netflix. Like if you've heard the horror stories about like developers at Netflix, they get paid a lot of money, but like it's a cutthroat environment. You know what I mean? So developers are not the highest paid roles in tech. I'll just say that outright. So if you're looking for the highest paid role in tech, it's gonna be somewhere on the business side, right? So it could be like like a senior level business analyst. It could be a senior level product owner. I don't know. You could have like you could be like a VP of technology or something like that. Thank you so much for the new subscriber, Lazola. Really appreciate it. So yeah, you could have a range of different roles, like depending on what your company values, that they pay more for those roles. Like I said, you could be a team lead you could be over developers, so if you're a team lead, I've seen it where like you don't code anymore as a team lead. You just manage all the developers that are underneath you, and you make sure that they're delivering their code on time and nothing's blowing up, right? And that would probably pay more than developer role as well would pay too. So it all just depends on what you're doing, what your goals are. But I would say somewhere on the business side, though, is likely the roles are going to pay more. The people who are helping keep the technical teams flowing and efficient, because you have to know the business side very strongly, but you have to know the tech side very strongly too. And I think that's why the product owners and the product managers and project managers get paid more money, just because they have to know two worlds, you know what I mean? Whereas the developers are usually just really good on the tech side. Developers sometimes don't know the business side. So it's good to know both or get familiar with both whenever you're working at a company, because like when you want to make those transitions into other roles, you're going to have to know both sides of the business. It won't help you to be really good at just coding and tech and not know the actual business side, competitor advantage, market, all that good stuff. You really need to know that too. So it depends on the company, but I think it's a role other than developer that pays the highest in tech, to be honest. Okay, so Romello Gilbert says, difference between DevOps and full stack engineer, completely different. So like with DevOps, you're doing all the stuff that happens when the code is done. So imagine that the software engineers are over there coding. They're working with the product managers, product owners, and they're like delivering all this code, and they're doing all these sprints, knocking out all these tasks, and they're pushing all this code to production. But when all that stuff is done, when their code is actually done, usually there's a step between them like pushing it up and then it going to production, and that's where the DevOps people come in. So like they'll be working with the business, delivering everything they need to do. So the business says, fix this, add this feature. The engineers go work on that. They push that code up, and then you have DevOps people who will be responsible for making sure that that code gets merged and integrated into the production environment without blowing everything up that's in the production environment. So much different process. It's similar to like what we were talking about earlier with the cybersecurity, because cybersecurity involves knowing like code, classes, object-oriented programming, encapsulation, all that good stuff that you learn as a developer, right? But it takes a totally different life of its own in cybersecurity, because you need to know all that stuff in relation to networks and network threats and stuff like that. So it's not the same like context as a software engineer would have, but it's the same kind of base knowledge that you have to start with. So with DevOps, there's a lot of things that DevOps engineers do that software engineers probably know. Like DevOps people probably know how to code usually. But they don't spend their time coding is what I'm saying though. They have to know a lot more about a lot more things. Like I said, it's just much different. So when it comes to like Docker, cloud services like AWS, Azure, and all the different tools that allow you to, merge that code to production effectively, right? So there's like pipelines, there's pipeline tools, there's CI/CD tools, there's deployment tools, deployment methods. There's just so much that I basically call DevOps its own world, right? So again, like what we were saying before, all these things require some baseline understanding and knowledge of coding and computer science understanding, right? Before you can go break into cybersecurity, before you can go break into DevOps. But it's all based around the same thing. So once you get good at, like one of them, like the foundational coding stuff we're talking about, or whatever it is, the foundational networking stuff we're talking about, or whatever lane you go into, once you get the grasp the basic foundations of that really well, then that opens the doors for you to start getting into those other lanes and those other things and exploring that more. Because DevOps is a whole animal on its own. It's like, because you're getting into operating systems and you need to know a lot about networks, operating systems, clouds, CI/CD pipelines. It's a whole nother thing. So just keep that in mind. But that's a great question though, because that's something that people don't talk about very often, and you don't learn that a lot in coding bootcamp because they didn't teach us that very much in coding bootcamp. Okay. Definitely noticed. Thanks for answering. Appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. All right. So last one, then we're out of here, guys. So for the QA, I did some Google searching, and the main tools that are being used in my area, Southern states, are Jira, Selenium, Soap UI. So I'll definitely take your advice and look into them. Yeah, man, I'm so glad. Thank you. Cause like I said, I use Jira every day at my job. I've used Selenium as well at my job. Not my job now. My first job, I learned Selenium, and I wrote some automation test suites for our code base there. So yeah, those are definitely good things to get into. I didn't think about those two. To be honest with you too, like Jira is a good one for anybody, guys. So that's a good just like general tip for anybody out there. Jira is a great tool to learn because a lot of tech jobs use it. But Selenium, like you said, that's a great suggestion because a lot of QAs like don't know Selenium. So some of them do, a lot of them don't. So the jobs that are looking for that in your area, those are going to be really good roles. By contrast, like at my job, the QAs don't write automation or they don't write automation or automated testing like with Selenium. So if you do know that on top of the other stuff too, it just makes you that much more dangerous when you go get your next job or whatever, because like I said, there's levels to it. There's QAs that just do they just put the scripts together and run them, and they don't really get into all the technical details and stuff. And then you've got some QAs that are just as good as developers. They used to be developers, they became QAs. Like there's a range. So if you become that person that knows all those different tools like Selenium and stuff, then yeah, I'm not sure what Soap UI is, but yeah, that sounds like it'll be good. All right, Marcus says, would it be a good idea to go through a coding bootcamp before going to a cybersecurity bootcamp? Absolutely, Marcus. Absolutely. I would go to a coding bootcamp before a cybersecurity bootcamp all day long because I don't know if you just joined the stream or not, but you're going to need to know a lot about coding before you get into cybersecurity. That's just what it is. Like people who are trying to get into cybersecurity without learning coding first, I think you're making a mistake. There's no certification or anything that's going to really prepare you for what you're going to be up against as a cybersecurity analyst or person or whatever. You got to ask yourself, right? How are you going to defend against technical attacks when you don't have the same understanding of technical attacks that the hackers do, right? If you don't know how to crack a network, if you don't know what a MAC address and network vulnerabilities are, and if you don't know how to exploit them yourself, how can you defend against them as a cybersecurity person, right? So you just, not to say this is for you, Marcus, you're asking a great question. I just want to really drill that point home. I think I'll make a video about it because it came up so many times tonight on the stream, so thank you guys for asking those questions, but you need to know a lot about coding before you get into certain other fields in tech, including DevOps and including cybersecurity, because those roles they require a very good fundamental understanding of computer science, coding, and the whole thing, not just coding, but the network piece. Like I said, just it's an entire field in itself, cybersecurity and DevOps as well too. So, but the thing they do share in common is software engineering and coding. And so I would definitely start there first because there's a lot to just cover in that world before, expand out into the other worlds. So I hope that helps you guys. Thank y'all so much for coming in and asking all these questions tonight. I truly appreciate y'all just taking the time out of your night to come join, especially with me being late and having some technical interviews. Technical interviews. Some technical issues tonight. With my audio and stuff and testing out the OBS software for the first time. So I'll be back more with these guys. If you guys found these helpful, let me know. Because yeah, I enjoy kind of giving you guys this real time kind of feedback and just being in touch with you guys. So this is Darian, guys, with Darian the Dev. I'll have more content dropping next week, and we'll do this again soon, guys. So I appreciate you. I'll talk to you.